there, and welcome to Two Balding Nerds. My name is Kellen,
And my name is George.
and today we're going to be discussing the Book of Boba Fett, Episode 3, entitled The Streets of Mos Espa.
Yes, it's just getting better and better, in my opinion.
I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of this episode. Um, One of the big things for me with this episode, though, um, was the exchange at the beginning was just so good.
You mean with the watermonger, or?
Yeah. I thought that was great. Um, just him bitching and whining to Boba Fett, and him being like, "Well, what do you want me to do about it?"
Overall, I liked the also seeing how he was like he's one of his vassals. I just like that the terminology they've been doing around it, being him like the daimyo or dan. Oh, no, I
I don't
screwed up.
even know how you pronounce that. I think it's like daimyo.
Yeah, you hit it right.
Yeah,
And then like this guy was his like vassal, and I liked how they're using that terminology in general. Um, And I liked seeing how the guy showed up and he was kind of, I feel like trying to manipulate Boba Fett because, like, well, some people say you suck. I'm not saying that, obviously, but some people are saying that. And it'd be good if you maybe, oh, I don't know, did something about it. Like,
yeah.
it
I
was,
have a feeling like this guy is going to be a thorn in his side later on.
I would say his character might be a little bit watered down. I don't think it'll be that much of a thorn in his side. But I was actually not impressed once again because Boba Fett doing the thing where he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I guess we'll do cyborg kids. There's no work for you, so you can work for me. That's all good." It's like I felt like that was gonna bite him in the ass. Because he keeps on doing that where he's like, "Hey, you who used to be my opponent, you can work for me." And I'm like,
Yeah,
someone's gonna have to betray you at some point because this is not how usually people aren't that loyal when they were you before your opponent, or at least me. I'm just a jerk in life, and I don't actually get people to be that loyal to me.
yeah. I was not a fan of the cyborg kids. I didn't really feel like they fit into like the mythos of Star Wars. Like they just kind of felt out of place to me.
I think they fit in the mythos. The only thing that didn't fit with me with them was the fact that their bikes were way too shiny for Star Wars.
Oh my god, don't get me started on that. That was like one of the major reasons why I disliked this episode. We'll get into that a little bit later, but yeah, I really didn't care for um like just kind of their whole what do you call it? Like the design of the characters, I guess. And like why were all of them British? Why are like all the characters now British? If they're if they're like a human character, they happen to be British or something.
That actually is majority of the times the more central to the Imperial worlds did have a British accent. That's
Did
like
they?
all. Yeah, if you technically, almost all the Imperial characters had a British accent for uh, the officers and stuff in the original series. Even Princess Leia, or Carrie Fisher, tried to do a
Oh
British
yeah.
accent at the very beginning, where she's like, "Oh, Feta, only you could be so bold," and then she totally forgot about her accent and went back
Yeah,
to her American
yeah.
one.
It was almost
So,
uh, the the um the in-universe explanation for that is that supposedly Princess Leia was like mocking Grand Admiral Tarkin's accent because he really rolled his R's, you know.
maybe.
So apparently that was like her way of mocking him in universe. That was the explanation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't hear of that one. I just enjoyed it nonetheless. I find it, yeah, because overall the Imperials tended to have an Imperial British accent. Like even if you think about the General Veers in Episode 5, the one who was using the AT-AT,
Yeah.
when he was like, "Yes, Lord Vader, the
You may
uh,
start your landing.
yeah, you may start your landing." He had an accent.
Yeah.
Most of them will have a small accent, partly because for some reason TV likes to make the British accent like an evil person accent.
Well,
So,
the British were imperial by nature for a long time there.
yeah, but I would say it's makes the history of the United States and the British Empire back in their old history. But It's just they always seem to like to use that one as the evil peoples or whatever you want to say. Um, and yeah, so I wasn't phased at all by their accent. Like I said, the only thing that phased me about them was why are their bikes so damn clean? Because Star Wars normally
Yeah.
had a grit to it, and that's always been one of its charms. Is where it's usually everything has a worn down look, which just made it look right. Like the Millennium Falcon, the droids, everyone always looked not spick and spam. And when they did look spick and spam, it was for something special.
Yeah, that's true. I was definitely sad to see the Tuscans, their whole village wiped out in that flashback scene. I don't know how you felt about that.
Yeah, no, I literally saw that, and you know how we were chatting about the other episode where it's like, oh, I look forward to more about the Tusken Raiders. Well, I guess this is the last episode we get a flashback with the Tusken Raiders.
Yeah, I was pretty bummed out about that. I was like, oh, just as things were starting to get good. I mean, that's not to say that there wouldn't be a flashback other than that, including them, but that might have just been it. And if that's the case, then that's a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, it must have really sucked for Boba Fett to come back to there. It must have been like real sand in the wound to come back to see them like that.
Totally. Yeah. Moving on from the flashback
Massacre.
scene though, he gets like the most rude awakening ever. A really pissed off Wookiee trying to fucking kill him.
Yeah, no, I literally when that happened, I said out loud, I was like, okay, like what the hell security does this guy have? Like he's in a castle. He just hired a bunch of cyborg children. He has two
Pig guards, the
I was gonna,
Gamorreans.
the Gamorreans, and a 7 foot tall Wookiee just walks into the fucking
Yeah,
place.
just waltzes in, goes right up to his bathtub, and is just like, "Yo, get the fuck up! It's time to die."
Yeah, I'm just going like, why? Like, how did everyone? And not to mention, he also had once again Shan. I was like, how the hell did you get through all that?
And Wookiees are not known for their stealth.
That's like if Han Solo snuck into Darth Vader's meditation chamber. He would be like, okay, what the hell? How did that happen?
Knowing Han Solo, he'd be like trying to sneak into Darth Vader's meditation chamber, and he would find like the only branch in that Star Destroyer to step on.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like, do you ever play the Lego Star Wars games?
No.
So, in the games, you couldn't make it in certain areas unless you were dressed up as a stormtrooper. One of the jokes in the game, because like Luke and Han were dressed up as stormtroopers, one of the jokes in the games is you would get pull a switch and a stormtrooper helmet would come down. If you did as Chewbacca, it would like sit on the side of your head, but you could still access things as a stormtrooper. And everyone just moved along, was like, "Yep, yep, that's a stormtrooper, no problem." I'm like,
Even
did
though all he was wearing was the helmet, right?
yeah, and it was like half sitting on his head. So I'm going like, so like, did this guy do the same thing? Did he put like a Gamorrean mask on the side of his head and just walk into the castle and no one noticed?
Yeah, I'd love to know how an 8 foot tall Wookiee just kind of like walked in there, like totally unimpeded, and just like was nearly allowed to murder him. At one point during that fight, I legitimately thought he killed him. I was like, whoa, what? Because
Well,
like,
when he was crushing his
yeah,
back.
and then his legs just went limp, and I was like, oh shit, is he dead? You know, like what the hell happened?
I thought they made the sound that like Vader used to make when he crushed their windpipes too. I
Yeah,
heard the little sound. I was like,
yeah.
what?
I thought he was like literally crushing the life out of him, and I was like, oh god. You know, like there's no way they'd end the episode or like end the show like that. I mean, we're 3 episodes in of a 7 episode show, so I was like, how are they gonna explain this one? But apparently, no. That was just like him giving him a hug.
Yeah, it was a very, very forceful hug, followed by an absolute beating from everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, he like ragdolled everyone in that room, and I thought it was pretty funny to see him, you know, end up in the Rancor pit. I know I read a comment somewhere from somebody, and they were like, "Oh, they should have just kept the Wookiee in the pit and had him be like their Rancor." You know how like the in Solo how Han ends up in the pit with Chewbacca, kind of like that.
I thought that was the plan actually, and I have to say, I was so happy to be proven wrong because when the twins show up and they're like, "Oh, we want to make peace," I was like, "That's strange." And then they're like, "Oh, it's bad for business." I was like, "Oh, I'm kind of disappointed that it's going to be going more towards a different crime family as opposed to the Hutts. I wanted to stick with Boba versus the Hutts." And then I completely glazed over that when they were like, "Oh, here's your gift." And I'm like, "It's a freaking Rancor.
Yeah, I was
Boba
like,
Fett has a Rancor."
I saw
Yeah.
that and I was like, yes, he has a fucking Rancor now. This is awesome.
Only thing that made that better is when they're like, "Oh yeah, you can ride one," and it's like, wait a minute, I literally had like toys and stuff where I'd be like, "Oh yeah," and then someone comes riding in on a Rancor, and I'm like, and we're going to actually see Boba Fett come riding in on a freaking Rancor.
I
Amazing.
mean, you and I recently played a lot of Star Wars: The Old Republic, the online MMO, and I remember seeing somebody riding by on a Rancor, and I went, "What the fuck is that?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, that's somebody riding a Rancor." I'm like, "Wait, you can do that?" You're like, "Yeah, it's a mount." I was like, "Oh my god, how cool would that be to ride around on a Rancor?"
It's going to be very cool if that's how cool it's going to be.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I mean, and of course they talk about it in the episode. I'm like, okay, have you ever heard of it's like a writing principle, it's called Chekhov's gun.
No, I don't know that.
Okay, so the principle it basically states that if you're like writing a story or a book or a play or whatever, and you introduce a gun into the scene, um, the rule is then if you introduce a gun into the scene, at some point it has to fire. It's like foreshadowing, right? You can't just like introduce a really tantalizing object and then not pay it off, right? So the fact that they've said, "Oh yeah, you can ride these things," for them to say that and then not pay it off is like a huge kick in the nuts. It's like totally blue balling you if they do that.
Yeah,
And I
there's no way
mean,
they're not going to
it.
now.
I mean, well, that's not true. I mean, it happens a lot. Um, there's a lot of times in like media, TV shows, and whatever where they introduce something, you're like, oh my god, that would be so cool to see, and then they don't pay it off. So I'm really hoping, I have my fingers crossed, that they don't screw us like that.
Well, the
I'd be
episode
so disappointed if at like no point during the show that he rides that thing.
I would say it's almost. I would actually would take bet money on the fact that he's going to, because these episodes have all been written by John Favreau. Praise be to John Favreau. And he knows how to set up something and have a payoff. Like if I recall, it was thanks to him's writing and everything like that that we got the scene where Captain America slightly tweaked the hammer in Age of Ultron, and then what 6 years later we finally get the scene with Endgame, and he's using Mjolnir when we thought that they had abandoned that plot when they destroyed the hammer in
Yeah, that's a
Thor. Like,
perfect example of Chekhov's gun. They set it up. Hey, he is probably worthy. He's made it move, and then paying it off in Endgame. Um, that's a really long example of it. In most cases, if you like I said, if you introduce the gun at the beginning of the movie, somebody has to shoot it by the end of the movie. That's the payoff. So there are some instances where stuff like that happens. You can get away with it in like the MCU because it's one long going story. It's kind of like the whole Avengers Assemble line. It's like hinted at in Ultron again, and then it's paid off in Endgame. So that's why so many people loved it so much because it was like, yes, we finally got that payoff that we've been waiting for.
yeah, and actually, they technically that example you gave, they actually did it in just Ultron all on its own because it showed Captain America slightly nudging it, and then Vision fully picking it up. So
Yeah,
kind of full circle in there. But then they were like, "Oh, by the way, you thought that was good? Wait another 6 years. It's gonna get better."
yeah. And going back to what you were talking about, the Huts like wanting to leave Tatooine because they're like, oh, it's a worthless rock, yeah, and there's some other syndicate or whatever that's interested, and we want nothing to do with them. A lot of people are theorizing, and I agree with it. I'm thinking that this other syndicate, this unnamed one that everybody seems to be totally scared of, is the Crimson Dawn from Solo with Kira, the one that was run by Darth Maul.
I'm pretty sure it's just the Pikes
You think
Syndicate again.
so? You don't think it's
I,
the Crimson Dawn?
Well, no, we saw all those pikes there, and it's like the the pikes all look the same. They all have that specific look, and I don't recall them working with the Crimson Dawn.
No, they wouldn't be. But I think that Crimson Dawn, because Darth Maul dies just before A New Hope happens, in Rebels. But I think everyone is still kind of scared of the Crimson Dawn because I guess they don't know that Maul's dead. So I think a lot of them think like he's still out there, and he's definitely something to be feared, right? So I'm thinking that's what it is. But you may be right. It might be the Pikes that they're kind of worried about.
Yeah, because the pikes are. Um, I think it was in. Oh yeah, it was in the last season of Clone Wars, uh, where they dealt with the pikes, and they dumped. There was a situation where they dumped a bunch of their spice, and they were saying that was the biggest mistake we could have possibly made because screwing over the pikes is like a death sentence. They will come after you hard, just like the Huts will.
They're pretty vengeful, hey?
Yeah, they do not like their business being tampered with. So, and they're quite, from what I can tell from the shows I've seen, they seemed quite eager to go, oh, you screwed with us. We're just going to come after you right off the bat. Versus like Jabba had a little bit more of a, okay, if it's more profitable for me, we will work it out, but cross me too far and then I'm after you. Pike's like, no, you crossed me once, that's it. We're coming after you. We don't screw around with our business being tampered with.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. So we kind of hinted at this earlier in the episode, and we're going to talk about it now because it's probably going to dominate a lot of time. But what did you think about the chase scene at the end with the Power Ranger scooters?
Go Power Rangers. It was the slowest fast speed chase I think I've ever seen.
Yeah. I'm just going to sum it up with the one word: awful. It was fucking awful. Um, I said to another friend of mine because he texted me. He's like, "What do you think about that?" And I was like, "It was so fucking cringe. It was like one of the hardest things I had to watch." We mentioned earlier how they were way too shiny and brand new looking for like being on a desert planet like Tatooine. And then, like you just said, now it was a very slow paced chase scene that was meant to be, fast paced. It was just awful. It just seemed so out of place. It seemed really childish and goofy. And I know there's some of that in Star Wars, but this was like just excessive. And then at the end, when he crashes into the fruit stand, and it's meant to be an homage or like a callback to Back to the Future when Biff crashes into the like manure truck or manure cart. It was just awful. I didn't like it. It didn't fit in with the episode, and kind of like going back to the first episode, how we talked about, hey, Boba's got his jetpack. Of course, he shows up right at the end of the chase with his jetpack. It's like, did we really need, the Spy Kids, cyborgs on their Power Ranger scooter chase? Do we need that, or could we just have had, like, following Boba Fett, like Ariel, flying with his jetpack and cutting this guy off or something? I mean, it would be less eventful, but it would be more practical and probably, better than what we got.
Yeah, that's a good point. Overall, I can say my biggest gripe is yeah, they're too shiny. Just does not work with me with how everything else in Star Wars has kind of a good matted look, especially when you think about it's Tatooine. There's sand all the time. It's rough in its course and it gets everywhere. So
And it's just
shiny things
awful.
shiny things are not going to stay long shiny for long in Tatooine. Just
No, especially with a lot of sandstorms and stuff like that. And even the Major Domo's speeder too looked way too nice. And I noticed, I mean, it's like kind of a minor detail, but if you look at it, like it had a steering wheel from like a car, and like they're supposed to have like I don't want to say a joystick. That's not the word I'm looking for. You know how
more like a plane's
yes,
control.
yes, exactly like that. They're supposed to have something like that. not a steering wheel.
I really don't. That one I would say it's a detail that I wouldn't really care too much about in all honesty when it
Yeah,
comes to
I
steering
understand a
because I
lot of
don't know.
people would just kind of overlook that, but like that just really bothered me because it just seems so out of place.
And overall, I can say this speed chase, like you covered it mostly, and I wouldn't say it was awful. I'd say anticlimactic would be the word I would use for it.
I mean,
And
their scooters literally look. You know what a rascal is?
I know the Little Rascals.
Okay, so the rascal is like those three-wheeled scooters that old people have that have like the basket on the front.
Oh yes,
That's exactly what those looked like to me. I was like, they're on old people scooters that hover.
I see. Yeah, no, I overall I felt like the thing that got me was it was also once again like Boba Fett is constantly trying to do things nice. And when she gave him the threat, being like, okay, get your boss out here or else, and he goes into the room and it's like, and you guys just stand out there and then they lock the door. It's like, yeah, what did you expect? Like, these guys don't respect you and everything as it is. So, like, oh, shock and awe, that guy betrayed you
Yeah,
again.
he needs to cut the nice guy routine, and he needs to just you know be a little bit more badass like he was in the second episode. That was a good episode.
Or in general, like he was when he walked into Bib Fortuna's castle and he was like, he didn't say a word, he just shot Bib. It's like, just do that.
Yeah,
It's going to work better for you in long run, especially with a bunch of these people here, because you'll lead through strength. So I'm wondering how long it's going to take for him to finally get to that point, or is it going to have a moment where it flips around where everyone goes like, "Oh, well, you're so nice, so we'll follow you," and he becomes king of Tatooine or something.
yeah,
Um, but overall, the like the build up and the premise and them talking about the Rancor and he's petting it and like, oh, the first thing it sees is going to imprint on and things like that. Totally overshadowed to me the um, less than exciting speeder bike chase.
yeah. A little bit anticlimactic finish. Okay, so uh, with all that being accounted for, if you had to rate this episode out of 10, what are you gonna give it?
Uh, yeah, I would. I was thinking about giving it originally a 9, but I think I have to go back to an 8 because you made some good points in my opinion about the speeder bike thing really being not that great. And it just more I thought about it too. It's like, yeah, actually, like when you think about like the pod racing from the original and how fast that was, and then they went and did this, it's like, yeah, it's like it was a slow speed chase, and it's like, okay, well, both like now thinking about it, going like, yeah, we could have had an aerial view of Boba Fett like shooting him from the sky and like blasting out his engines and then
Yeah,
landing on top of his hood like a badass. Like
yeah.
that
That's
would have been great.
that's exactly what I had in my mind. What I was thinking should have happened. So it's really cool how we're like on the same page as far as like action scenes and what should happen. But I'm surprised that you gave it an 8, considering that um, I was not so friendly. Um, but that's just because, like, to me, it was such a major thing that just felt so out of place. It didn't seem like Star Wars to me, and it was really jarring. So, um, if I had to rank like every other part of the episode, I probably would have given it a 7.5 out of 10. But looking at the episode as a whole, like I would have to probably give it like a 5 or a 6, just because, like I said, that ending just felt so out of place for Star Wars. And I'm going to be realistic, and I know that that's probably not going to be consistent. That's probably a one-off. At least I'm hoping that's the case. But with that being said, I'm still excited for the next episode. I still want to see where things go. Like you, I'm really amped up for the idea of him riding the Rancor into town and being like, "Hey, I'm the new boss in town. Everybody bow down to me." I think it's going to be great. So, um, like I mentioned before, I think somebody said that there's 7 episodes. I thought there was 6, but apparently there's 7. So that means we got 4 more to look forward to. With that being said, Wednesday is fast approaching, and yeah, we'll get back together to discuss episode 4, hopefully pretty soon here. So, yeah, looking forward to the next one, and looking forward to speaking to everybody here again. So don't forget to like and subscribe for more content if you like what you heard here.
Thanks again for watching.
Have a nice day. This is the way.